If someone had said you're cut because you've had funding for a long time and now, that's all we can afford to give you, absolutely no worries at all. But it seemed to be we were cut for reasons which was surprising to me.
Hi everyone, this is Silesh Ram, AsianCultureVulture.com. I'm with the amazing Shobana Jeyasingh. We're going to be talking about We Caliban, which is a new work, just came out in September. It's going to be at Sadler's Wells East. Shobana Jeyasingh, welcome to AsianCultureVulture.com. You have 8 dancers in it,
Yes,
and there's equal gender split, 4-4?
Yeah, actually originally there were 4-4, but actually the spring tour has 3-5.
These are the characters from The Tempest, and how have you managed the gender debate? I think has really come through in what you're saying. So again, how does that manifest itself in the production?
Because we don't stage the play, in some ways it doesn't start with casting. Like if I was going to do The Tempest as a director, then I had to think, who is Caliban, how many people? So the cast list doesn't influence the choice. So probably that's why I chose 4-4 to give me choices. But the first 15 minutes, everybody is Caliban. So it's really a picture of communal life being kind of something cohesive. So they're not in character. It's the island before the play starts. It's off stage, if you like.
It's about the time before and the kind of disruption that occurs.
That's right.
And the unspoken bits of The Tempest.
Well, when the play happens to these people, then there are characters, but actually they themselves play the characters. I mean, that's something you can do with dance. You can be quite abstract. Miranda is played by a young woman because it's a kind of a historical character. Prospero's by a man. And then there are 2 other characters, Antonio, who's the brother of Prospero, and then Ferdinand, who's the son of the king of Naples, who actually took the crown of Milan. The real play, which is really about kingship, it's a story about power. Man A has power, Duke of Milan, and then man B, king of Naples, using the Duke's brother, takes the power from him and then casts this man into the sea. And then when he's in the island, Prospero, who's also an incredibly clever magician, he manages to bring all his enemies to that island, and then he gets the crown back for his daughter. So that's the story of The Tempest. It's not really about Caliban. Caliban is the side story in the original play.
So this premiered in September. What, if anything, has surprised you about the reaction? Had a run last year, towards the end of last year, and now there's a spring tour. Anything about the reaction that surprised you?
It was a play one had to think about. It's a brilliant, brilliant play. It's a very iconic play. It's not a play you can just take and just, do something superficial. Because I had spent a lot of time thinking and talking, and because I had 2 fantastic women to talk to. One was Uzma Hamid, and the other is Priyamvada Gopal, who's a professor of colonialism at Cambridge. Talking to them was just an amazing experience because they really made you think. They made you think of the text in a different way. I was still kind of in that mindset of thought, and I was actually surprised and very delighted that people really loved We Caliban as a dance piece. I think it's quite dramatic. The lighting is very dramatic. It changes a lot over the hour. So we had really lovely responses just to the spectacle of it, actually.
Now, this has a short spring tour. Any plans to take it internationally?
I would love to. With dance, but as I'm sure you know, in the arts, it's very much the buyer's market, Sadly, it's not the seller's market. There's a lot of luck. There's also what already exists there, because you need these networks. And at this point in time in the world, it's quite difficult for these arts networks to survive and be healthy because they're being drowned out by lots of other networks, But one lives and hopes, I really do hope that we'll get a bigger audience. Yeah.
You've been around in dance a long time.
Yes.
How do you assess the scene right now? It started out as a Bharatanatyam dancer,
Yeah.
now you're
Yeah.
choreographer, but you're
Yeah.
not. You, obviously, I don't know how much,
There
if any, Bharatanatyam is in
there is
this.
Bharatanatyam
Right.
there, but
Right.
it's also Bharatanatyam that's been slightly messed around with. But actually, yeah, there was a lot of Bharatanatyam in especially in the first 15 minutes. You know, it doesn't look particularly healthy because contemporary dance, contemporary work in dance, it's a very specialized and quite fragile thing, because to do contemporary work you have to be nimble, because what is contemporary always changes. It's like taking a snapshot of the day. It's not going to be the same as it's going to look tomorrow, right? It usually needs smaller organizations which are like nimble, and you need people who are willing to take a risk, because it's not going to be the same, you know, because your comments are going to be different. So then you need a society where people are willing to take risks, and that's actually at the moment I feel that that's quite difficult to achieve.
Yeah, I can.
You know.
I feel that generally that
Yeah.
people are risk averse.
That is, they're very
and
risk
that's
averse.
slightly disappointing in a sense that, you know, new work and new, you know, young dancers
Yeah,
or young
it's quite
choreographers.
difficult for younger choreographers to.
The opportunities are very
Yeah.
narrowing.
Correct, because probably when I was starting out, there were lots of different steps. So when you started out, you had there are still free platforms, but then you have to have platforms that take you higher, you know, where you're challenged more, but also you have to make a living, you know. It's not dancers and choreographers like in every other worker. They need to earn money to live. A brain surgeon and a choreographer and a dancer, they're quite similar. You know, they're people who have to work very hard to get expertise, and then at some point, that's the way you have to make your living. You have to be rewarded for it. You don't want a brain surgeon who just does it part-time on Saturdays. You know, if you want to have an operation, you want somebody who's spent a bit of time and worked very hard to get a level of excellence and experience. That's what you value in a brain surgeon, and I don't see why that can't be the same for other activities like the arts. The arts has to have a realistic economic presence within a country for it to thrive and survive, and if that is denied, then it's going to be suppressed.
This is your first production at Sadler's Wells East?
Yes,
Right.
it is.
And how is that as a space? I mean, it's a
lovely space.
Same as spaces here, but
Yeah.
what's it like? I mean, I don't know whether the Snape Maltings where you first had We Caliban, was it a much smaller space?
No,
or?
actually, Snape is brilliant theatre. It's actually quite large. It's a very different, well, you know, it's in Norfolk. It's a very rural area with people who often, you know, they have to drive to the theatre, and it's got a very long history of art making. So it's a very, very special place. Sadler's Wells East is the opposite. It's a very new place. So it's quite exciting to be part of a new venture, and obviously we've shown at Sadler's Wells Angel for many years, so we're waiting to see, you know, what it'll be like. But you know, I think it's also really exciting to be somewhere new.
There's a lot of turmoil within the Arts Council and funding in the UK. Where do you feel we've arrived at Margaret Hodge review, talking about a different approach?
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
Well, the first thing I have to say is I feel very, very grateful to have had funding from the Arts Council for many years of when I was beginning, in the middle of my career. So I feel, you know, that's an absolute privilege, you know, so nothing can take away from that. I think their last program called Let's Create, personally, I just felt a bit alienated from the values and for the aims of that.
You had a cut in funding.
And we were cut.
Cut because of your success, which I didn't really understand.
Yeah, well, actually, it's not so much that I was cut, because I understand no one can just expect money from the public purse forever. I totally get that. So it's not the fact that we were cut that worried me. It's really why we were cut. If someone had said you're cut because you've had funding for a long time and now, you know, that's all we can afford to give you, absolutely no worries at all. But it seemed to be we were cut for reasons which was surprising to me. So I was really happy that Margaret Hodge has done her review, which I think in a way is more encouraging for the future of the arts, particularly for contemporary work in dance, because it needs its own particular approach, a belief in, I don't know, excellence in the arts, and a belief in the specialism. Specialism is very different from elitism, you know, as I was talking about brain surgeons earlier. It really is about valuing the work that people do in order to specialize in a career. And it's not an amateur activity at its best. Obviously, the more people who do art, brilliant. But I think one has to recognize that, like in any activity, you do need the space for specialization.
Thank you so much for your time. Brilliant.
Very
All
good.
the best for the week,
Yeah,
Caliban.
thank
you.
you.
Thank you.